Okay, so I launched the meeting.
Okay, and also, okay, and yes, and so we also have Dr. Stephen Pers from sociology to introduce her. So Stephen, I'm just going to hand it right over to you.
All right, can you all hear me?
I think so. We think so.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Allison et al. For the invite and for the logistics. It's my great pleasure to introduce one of my star SNRE PhD students. Marlise Arteaga comes to us from Pando, Bolivia in the southwestern Amazon. I first met Marlise in about 2010, I think it was, when she came to UF to learn English under a USAID project. And that's part of a longer relationship between her home institution, the Amazonian University of Pando, and the University of Florida, which we have renewed recently. She then came back to us after the ELI experience to do her master's in UF's Master's in Development practice program, where she developed a project on culturally appropriate environmental education curricula for the lowlands in Bolivia. She then went back to Bolivia again and worked with a group of NGOs on a variety of sustainable rural development projects. During that period, she also co-authored with Marianne Schmink an important report on gender and resource management in the Amazon for CIFOR. And then she returned to us to join the SNRE PhD program in interdisciplinary ecology. And in that context, Marlise has been working, as you see in the title, on the question of hydroelectric dams as a form of infrastructure that is often planned with very little public input and raises serious questions about environmental governance. Marlise has worked with a lot of different organizations and collaborators. Most recently, she joined the UF team on a Moore Foundation project called Governance and Infrastructure in the Amazon, which we call GIA, led by Drs. Betty Loisel and Robert Bushbacker. And under GIA, Marlise has especially worked with a large number of very diverse partner organizations in the Upper Madera watershed, which you're going to hear about today. Working in a very participatory mode, focusing on knowledge co-production led by the stakeholders to improve their capacity to influence infrastructure planning. And this is the context of Marlise's dissertation, which picks up and unpacks key aspects of how planning for dams is unfolded in the Upper Madera and lessons that we can all learn from her work with regard to future collaboration, as well as infrastructure planning. So I'm going to stop there. You all didn't come here to hear me. You came here to hear Marlise. So Marlise, they're all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Pers, for that kind introduction. And yeah, I've been doing this research for quite a couple of years now. And today I just want to give you a brief overview of the whole dissertation, but focuses in the second chapter. So just because I just really want to go into the techniques that I use in the field, in the gathering data. So my title is Multilevel Environmental Governance in the Amazon, focused in the case of the Madera Hydroelectric Dam Complex in the border between Bolivia and Brazil. Today I'm gonna share with you a little bit of the context, a little bit of the theoretical framework. Then I'm going to show you a couple of pictures from the field work. And as I said before, I just want to go deep into the chapter 2, which is mostly related to stakeholder analysis. And then talking a little bit about what we already give back to the community, and also other things that we're planning to do as soon as I finish my graduation. First, a little bit of the context. This is a beautiful picture that we took in one of the workshops that we did. I couldn't find the author of the painter, but I think that it really reflects how the communities think about themselves and about their territory in the area. So first, I need to talk about the IRSA, the Initiative for the Integration of Infrastructure in South America. Maybe some of you already heard about this. So basically, they are trying to connect the Pacific Ocean with the Atlantic Ocean through the construction of different type of infrastructure like roads, dams, hydroelectric, among other. And they are trying to connect all the countries in South America. There is a similar initiative in Central America too. So this is like a very huge effort that it's gone for many years to now. These projects are key infrastructural components, and the ones that I'm focused on related to the hydroelectric dams are are components of the Bolivia Peru hub for COSI Plan Acairsa. So the main purpose for them is to consolidate the fluvial international integration path, mainly improving the transportation logistics and socioeconomic development in the region, especially in the Madre de Dios in Peru, Rondônia in Brazil, and Pando and Beni in Bolivia. So they want to enable the change of the energy matrix by increasing the supply for renewable energy in the region. And as you can see in this picture, so there is a lot of projects that they have been trying to achieve in this corridor. So now I just want to show you a little bit of where is the Upper Madera Basin is the geographical area that I have been focused on. The Madera River is born in the confluence of the Mamoré and Beni rivers in Bolivia, as you can see in these different pictures. The Madera River collects the Andean and tributaries flowing from southern Peru and Bolivia and traverses thousands of kilometers of lowland Amazon rainforest before merging with the mainstream stream in the Amazon. It is a really important tributary of the Amazon River. But it's not just because of that is important, because there is a lot of other things that are in this area. For example, we identify different kind of indigenous communities like the Esejas, Cabineños, and Tacanas. And also there is a really important natural area named Bruno Raqua. In this area, it was cataloged as with a very high biodiversity, and also it's been affected by the construction of the dams in the past years. So here is just a picture where you can see, like in the upper part next to Portobello, there is the Santo Antonio Dam, and a little bit further is the Giro Dam. So these two dams have been already built in the Brazilian area and are part of the Madera complex. And this has been fully operating in the past years. Now they are planning to do two other dams that are the ones that I've been doing research on. One is the one in the binational area between Bolivia and Brazil, and it's called, it will call Ribeirão, because it's in the Cachoeira of Ribeirão. And then the Cachoeira Esperanza Dam, which is in the Beni River and is in the Bolivian territory. And also you can see here are the communities that I've been working so far, like Mutum Paraná, Abuná, and Guajara Mirim in Brazil, and Villavella, Cachola Mamoré, Cachola Esperanza, Alen Carmen in the Bolivian side. So this is just with this picture, I just want to show you some of the results that we have in an interview that we did in 2019 with different institutions and stakeholders that had been involved during all this process since 2017. And basically we were trying to identify what were the main drivers or activities that are planned in this area, and trying to identify what will be the social ecological impacts. And this group identify as main social ecological impacts like the river connectivity interruption, the social conflicts, fish richness reduction, people displacement, biodiversity reduction, and loss of livelihoods. And this is really consistent with some of the key elements that we found from the literature review. Like, for example, in the literature review, we could find that the environmental impact assessments made from the Giro and Santo Antonio dams did not consider long-term impacts or accumulative impacts on the Bolivian side. And it is highly probable that the dams, the Giro and Santo Antonio dams, will extend, their impacts will extend into the Bolivian territory. The reservoirs that they create directly affect the impacts of the hydrological level in the extreme north in the Bolivian Amazon. And one of the major impacts was on the fisheries resources in Bolivia territory, as the dam caused a disruption of migratory fish in their migratory routes. And so the fishery industry in Bolivia is really important. A lot of these communities that live in this area, they rely on the fishery industry. So the fisheries sector generates a lot of jobs in the area and provide fish to support and contribute the food security and sovereignty through the country. And in the department of Pando in Bolivia, also there is this protected area with high conservation value, as I mentioned before. The Bruno Raqua is a really important reserve, and it's been affected and flooded in the past years because of the construction of these dams. Here I just want to show you a little bit about my theoretical framework I was trying to use. I was incorporating like the political ecology, environmental governance, and social ecological systems, trying to put together and try to understand the transboundary issues related to water resources, and also linking to the dam construction in this area. So the political ecology, I took it from the perspective of the constructivism approach and environmental narrative, and the social ecological systems from the perspective of social learning, and the environmental governance for the perspective of the multi-level governance, transboundary governance, and water governance. And I had three research questions. My first research question was related to political ecology and social ecological systems, and I used stakeholder analysis and critical discourse analysis. For my question number two, I tried to link political ecology and environmental governance using statistical analysis and thematic analysis. And then my third question, incorporating social ecological systems and environmental governance, use direct content analysis. So this is just a brief overview of what I was trying to incorporate into the research. Like just going very briefly into the social ecological system. So the hydroelectric dams and the regions that they affect can be viewed as a social ecological systems because dams generate ecological changes in aquatic ecosystems, like for example, fish population, vegetation, water quality, wetlands. And at the same time, those ecological changes are connected to social and political relationships, of course. And dams can thus cause the loss of resources important for local livelihoods and threaten family access and welfare. Dams can also threaten local cultures, burial sites, and other spiritually important locations. From a system perspective, dams can affect the power dynamics among social groups, often increasing power inequalities that in turn raises some questions about political ecology. The political ecology consequently can be useful to apply for dams as expression of the powers of governments and other social actors who may cause environmental degradation that threatens the livelihood and communities for local people. For the case of an international watershed, in this case, political ecology also call attention to the geopolitical significance of the dams, which may reflect or modify relationship between countries and of course their governments, and between neighboring regions and cities. The political dynamics surrounding of dams raises questions about processes of decision making, which lead to the discussion of governance. And my third part related to environmental governance, it calls the attention of the breadth of the participation, but different social actors in the planning processes for dams, as well as the managing their impacts. So such processes often involves a series of complicated procedural steps required by laws, but these laws are different in Bolivia and in Brazil, and in which powerful actors such as the governments and corporation often seeks to move really quick and trying to minimize the public participation. So the result is governance that fails to recognize or adequately account for the various impacts of dams, deal in its mitigation plans, for example. The improvement of governance that results more attention to the planning processes and the breadth of public participation before decision about funding, seeding, and construction are made. So here I just want to show you my research question. My main question was related to whether the impacts of the construct and plan hydroelectric dams on the political ecology and governance of the upper Madera River Basin as a social ecological system. And then I have these other three questions, but I'm going to focus for now on in the first one on how do the interests of different stakeholder groups influence their public discourses related to the social ecological impacts of the hydroelectric dams in the upper Madera River. So in this map, you can see again the research area. I start this research in 2016-17. So basically it included the department of Beni and Pando in Bolivia. In Bolivia, we call department to the state. So it's basically the state of Pando in Bolivia and the state of Rondônia in Brazil. And I will focus on the communities of El Carmen, Cachuela Mamoré, Villavella, and Cachuela Esperanza, as you can see in the maps. In 2017, I just ran the literature review, but also I had a lot of informal interviews with key informants in Brazil and Bolivia, like, you know, call them, talk to them, having online interviews and talking to them. In 2018, I ran an unstructured interview with different stakeholders in Bolivia and in Brazil. In Brazil, I went to Abuná, Jesi Paraná, Nueva Mutún, and in Bolivia, in Guayaramerín, Cachuela Esperanza, and Villavella. So that allows me to really go deep into what was the problem and what will be the better way to address my research on that. In 2019, I did a semi-structured interviews with including other communities in the Bolivia, like El Carmen, Villavella, Cachuela Esperanza, and Cachuela Mamoré. And in 2019, I did a participatory mapping in 4 communities in Bolivia. Basically, the idea of this participatory mapping was for them to reflect a little bit in how was their community before 2014 and after 2014. So why 2014? Because in 2014, there were a big flood in the area, like a very, very unexpected flood that it's really damaged a lot of their crops, livelihood. A lot of people just lost their homes. So it was a really, really big issue. And in the imaginary of the people, the construction of the Jirau Dam exacerbate the floods in 2014. So basically the idea of this participatory mapping was to see what was their perception about how was their community, also talking related to the structure of their community, but also the livelihood that they had in their community, and after 2014 how it was. So in 2020 I did semi-structured interviews on 4 communities. And then in 2020 and some life story also in 4 communities. So here just a couple of pictures of our field gathering data. We run a lot of workshops in different communities, in local universities, and also we partner with a lot of NGOs and grassroots organizations, basically trying to disseminate information and try to see how we could really support the communities in some way or another. And this was part of in parallel with the governance and infrastructure project that Dr. Peirce was talking about at the beginning. I also did, as I tell you, participatory mapping, stakeholder analysis, social ecological systems. So it was really using a lot of participatory methods, trying to really engage the community and make them reflect on their own so what was really happening in their communities, because when we went the first time in 2017, 2018, they didn't really have a lot of information on what was happening in the other side of the river in the Brazilian part. So the Bolivian communities had been seeing a lot of changes after the construction of Jirau, but they wasn't really sure why or what was happening, even though it's a really close territory, but the lack of information and because they didn't receive enough information, they wasn't sure what was really happening, why the river just, the levels of the river rise and they didn't goes down, or why the soils were completely, floated and they could not grow cassava, or they could not grow beans and other things anymore because they couldn't do it anymore. So we also use power and interest matrices, role plays, focus groups. This is one of the participatory mapping that within one community. And we try to include everyone in the community, so we could have the perspective from everyone, from the elderly, from the youth, from everyone, men and women. So here, I'm just gonna go deep into the stakeholder analysis, how we do it. So this analysis is part of the first question that I am trying to see. So the data collected in this workshop and presented here was supplemented with 2 other type of data. So the data that I analyzed, it wasn't just based on this workshop that we ran, but also with key informal interviews with many of the participant organizations and interviews carried out with potentially impacted community members. I conducted a total of 50 supplementary interviews. This data was collected before and after the workshop and allow us to fill the missing contextual details and assess the amount of information available about the proposed dams and position of different stakeholders. So while a detailed analysis of the 50 supplementary interviewed is not like in this slide, but it's in the written document. So I just wanna show you a little bit what was the workshop that we did. So we separated in 3 different parts. First, we partner with OGMA, which is a grassroots organization focused on women empowerment, and they work in the area for more than 4 years. So basically she helped us, she and the whole team of the OGMA help us to identify the invitees from the workshop, because we really want a diverse type of stakeholders participating. And she contacted us with the binational committee, Comité Binacional por la Vida en la Cuenca del Río Madera. So this binational committee is an effort as grassroots governance made up for various kind of stakeholders. And their goal is to influence decision-making about energy development and local and regional livelihoods and conservation efforts. So the committee has 3 main goals: to stop the construction of the remaining 2 dams in the complex, the Riverão Cachal Esperanza, provide information to those to be potentially impacted, so to the communities, and exploring alternative options for local community development. So then we discuss the workshop content, the creation of the workshop content. So we create this workshop from scratch and really hearing OGMA and the Comité Binacional on what they think will be important for the participants to know and the information that they need to be presented. Then we did the workshop with the data collection, the stakeholder identification, power and interest matrices, and role play. And after that, we did the data analysis, we write a case study, and also we report back to the binational committee, and also we create a guide that they specifically request, a guide. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about that. So we follow the framework laid out in Reed et al. In 2009, the paper Who's In and Why. So we began to identify the stakeholders. I did a snowball sampling in order to conduct the semi-structured interviews before the workshop. Based on those interviews and together with OCMA, we construct a list of participants and invite them to this workshop. The workshop comprised the second stage of stakeholder identification. So the participants themselves had to identify all relevant stakeholders. So this process of identification and categorization is what Reed refers to as reconstructive categorization of bottom-up. But also I apply the analytical or top-down approaches. So I did through the interest and power matrices and situation analysis. So here just to show you that we have 29 participants with 15 stakeholders groups represented, like we had grassroots organizations, local governance, schools, professionals, social movement, church, neighborhood representative, etc. So the idea wasn't to have like a lot of people, but have a diverse participants. So the participants were provided with flip charts and markers and divided into 3 groups of 4 and 5 each. These groups were randomly selected and assigned to each group. So the flip chart has, I think I need one. Okay, yeah. The flip chart had color labels for pre-identified type of organizations like social movement, governments, NGO, communal organization, private industry, and financiers. So the flip charts were also already divided into 5 scales like international, national, state, municipal, and local. And each group was given the same structure. So they have to identify those actors, what they consider to be relevant into the potential construction of the Madera complex. We use the reconstructive method, which are stakeholder-led. So this methodology allows the stakeholders themselves to identify, like I said before. So here you could see all the stakeholders that they identify. So next, we guide the participants in the constructing a power and interest matrix. So this was based on the stakeholders previously identified in the first activity. So we used the results of those first activity to build these matrices. Here we divide power and interest onto 2 flip charts to be assessed separately, side by side. So the power and interest were defined as being relative to the construction of the proposed dam, and each flip chart was divided into quadrants. We have, you can see, in favor, against, neutral, and undecided. So each quadrant was also provided by scale, from local to international scale. The participants placed the previously identified actors based on their perception and of their power and interest. Because this was done as a group, it generates significant conversation about where different actors should be placed, what their position in relations to the dam, their power to influence the decision maker of making over the dam, and the interest in influencing those decisions. So here you can see the interest matrix, where the concentric circles represent the scales on which the actors operate, and size of the green circle indicate the level of interest. So bigger the circle, the more interest that they have. In terms of interest, a few things jump out. So there are more actors with interest that are against the project than there are for the project. There are only 4 stakeholders identified as having significant interest in seeing the dam built, like the state actors and the financial institution. On the other hand, there are double the number of organizations listed against the project, from local to national. So all which are, like, as you can see here, the civil society organizations, certain actors of producers, labor unions, and some universities. On the other hand, the participants indicate that small farmers and cattle ranchers have significant interest in supporting the dams. On the other hand, fishermen are the most likely to be direct impacted, as we could see in the literature review, seem to be against the dam, but less so than others. Is why their circle is smaller. This is interesting because there is fishermen in the region that who are already impacted the most directly from the Madera dams near Portobello. And here is the matrix of power. So basically we have 4 entities which with an interest in seeing the dams built, each labeled as having significant power, and government institution, the national government, and the Ministry of Environment, and the state level government. And against the construction of the dams are 6 institutions, 4 of which have like medium power. We have OCMA, the Catholic Church, the Binational Committee, and the UMSA is one of the biggest university in Bolivia. Each of these 4 is also situated at the national level. So it is interesting that the local and municipal civil society organization are labeled as having significant power. Though this group is such does not appear on the interest matrix. So fishermen, again, at the local level are considered against the project, but have less power. This is mainly because they think they are not well organized enough to have some weight in the decisions. But as noted above, also are labeled as having the least interest, despite being the most likely to be directly impacted. So here you can see like the 2 matrices plotted together, and it takes into account the power and interests together, and divides the stakeholder groups into their respective quadrants based on their perceived position relative to the dams. So you could see the in favor and against quadrants showing the figure demonstrate that could be expected in terms of who falls into each position in each category. So for some final comments, it was so all the analysis has been shown that ineffective planning process and lack of recognition of the social environmental impact on Brazil dam and Bolivian territory. There was a big problem and a lot of discussion about this. So the main actor identified in Alto Madera are community organizations, municipal leaders, local associations, extractivism, fishermen, the construction company, and national government. But basically the community organization and association, they are the ones who are opposed the dams, and this group are very largely disenfranchised by the national government in the whole process of planning. Stakeholders opposed to the dams, they recognize what important is conserving the aquatic and terrestrial biodiversity, and as well the water sources for them, for the communities. And the pro-dam stakeholders stress that the dam's construction will bring job and cheap energy to the region. And stakeholder analysis show that the national governments and pro-dam actors have more power and influence in the planning processes without taking into account the voices of the local community. And this is really consistent with the literature review that we did. And there are a lot of suggestions on how these processes could be improved. Like, for example, if we address dam design from a multidisciplinary perspective as the only way to understand the potential impacts of fisheries in livelihoods in general, because usually the cumulative effects or the long-term effects have not been assessed very well, neither in Bolivia or in Brazil. And also it is really important to involve technicians and scientists from affected countries in impact assessment when dams are located in transboundary areas of the sector, because during this case, most of the technicians and researchers are from Brazil and not from Bolivia. So Bolivia is just, agreeing and signing, but not really being really involved into the gathering data or analyzing all the impacts. And then assess the relationship between energy generated by hydroelectric dams and the loss of ecosystem services and social economic benefits that would provide a river in their natural state. This will be really important to do in order to see the cost benefits of the construction of these dams. And here I just want to show how the political discourse differ from one politician to another, or also from the same politician, but their discourses will change through time. For example, in 2006, in the Summit of the South American Community of Nations and the Social Summit of Integration of People in Cochabamba, Bolivia, in 2006, Evo Morales, who was the president at that time, he stated that we must review IRSA to take into account the concept of people who wants to see roads in the framework of development poles and not highways through which container pass for exports amid corridor of misery and increased external debts. But at the same time, in the Bolivian Strategic Development Plan for the same period, they put in favor of the development of our people under the South American Integration Scheme, referring to IRSA, becoming the pole of energy development in the region. So through the whole analysis of different kind of documents, you could see these different discourses, like one for the international sphere, or one from, like from a broader perspective, and then others for documents, internal documents, kind of. So in order to give back results to the community, so I've been giving back the community different publications, workshops, in-person workshops, online workshops, guides to the community during this time. So basically in the returning data, we translate a lot of documents, like for example, this Guía de Talleres, that was something that the communities specifically asked after we did the stakeholder analysis workshop. They request that they want a guide because they want to use the same methodologies and go to the different communities, and also some schools. They request the guide because they want to use this with their students. So we basically prepare this guide. We already give this guide last year to the communities, and then training and workshops. We did a lot of training in the Universidad Amazónica de Pando, which is a local public university in there, to many students, and in a project that we did and was linked to my dissertation. We support 5 dissertations, and so 5 students were they did their own research and using some of these methodologies and others, and they already graduate, so they gained their undergrad diploma. And then translating scientific information for policymakers. So this is something that I need to do still. Maybe I will start doing it next year after I finish all the dissertation. So I just want to thank to all the collaborators that made it possible to carry out this research, because there were a lot of organizations and people involved in this, and it is really a lot of information. I hope you could understand it, because it's a lot of things, and I was trying to be concise, but yeah, it was kind of difficult for me to try to focus on something to share with you guys, but thank you. Should I stop sharing?
Okay. All right, Marlies, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Okay, well, thank you. That was wonderful. And I have a question for you. So I know those workshops, those kinds of community-based workshops can be very complicated, and it seems like those went very well for you. And so, but I know that sometimes they can go not well. And so I'm wondering if you have like some lessons learned or, you know, things that your takeaways from the way those workshops went that you would tell to somebody else, gives advice to somebody else who's planning on doing something like that around a contentious issue like this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and definitely it's not easy. And we did about 7 workshops, and we learn through, I just show as an example one of them, but and each one we learn from each one and try to improve for the next one. One of the lessons learned is like diversity is really important. Try to do the effort to have different stakeholders involved in the process. For us, it was kind of difficult to involve politicians. The political situation in Bolivia is very fragile. It's been really fragile for a couple of years now, and there is a lot of rotation in personnel. So it's hard to try to involve the major or some environmental directors, but we really try to do the effort to do that because we understood that it was really important. Another thing is like to identify key partners that will help you to run the workshop in the area, because even though I'm from Bolivia, I'm from the Amazon, but I don't know everyone. I need people who really live there, who has the experience, who live the day by day, so they will give me the feedback that I need in order to have the results I wanted. I think that one of the key aspects on why we have such a good results with the workshop was because we were really open to listen to them. We didn't go there like, hey, we are going to do this and that and that. No, we went and okay, we have this idea. What do you need? What do you want? How we can build this together? So it was like a co-construction of everything. Most of the workshop we did it from scratch, from like having a lot of meetings. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. It's really energy consuming, but at the end it's worth it because you will have, I think, stronger results with that. And also you will gain the trust from the people that you are working with.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So does anybody in person have a question? Or on Zoom is also, oh, there's one.
Okay. Oh yeah. For example, of course it depends on what is your objective, right? In our case, our objective was to work with a multi-stakeholder platform. So we really need a diverse type of actors on the table. So we need people from the government, we need people from the industry, we need cattle ranchers, we need fishermen, we need indigenous communities. So it's when I said biodiversity of people, I mean diversity of people, I refer to that because that was our focus, to have like stakeholder platform and give everyone the chance to talk. And just to tell you like quick story, in the role play that we did, it was really interesting because one of the participants who was one of the main leaders who were against the dams and everything, he had to be the major. He had to put the head of the major, and he was like, this is so hard, I cannot think like them, But I think that it also helps people to put in the shoes of the other, try to understand their reasons, and force you to think, not to agree, but at least to try to understand why they react or behave in the way they do.
Oh, we've got some questions, yeah.
Hi, Marlies. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's really interesting. I am from Brazil, so it was really nice to listen to you. And I am really curious just to know if we will continue to work or to follow the policymakers to see how they are applying all of your beautiful work.
Yeah. As Dr. Stephen Peirce mentioned at the beginning, so my dissertation was kind of not embedded, but parallel to different projects. One of them was the governance and infrastructure in the Amazon project, and that gave us the opportunity to go a little bit, further and have more impact. For example, in one of the last workshops that was made by the GIA, but specifically in the Upper Madera part, was when we were giving back the results from the project. We give back videos, we give back, we also wrote a book based on the research of the students. We generate Estatuto de Consentimiento Informado, like consent, I always forgot that name, Estatuto de Consentimiento Informado. It's a document that all the local organization should have in order to raise their voices and say, yes, we want this infrastructure project in our territories or not. So basically, after we give to them, to the communities, to all the communities that were participating in the GIA project, we give them these products. When I talk to them after that, they say, yes, we went with the Estatuto de Consentimiento Informado, we went to the alcaldía, to the mayor, and we say, hey, this is happening in our territory, and we have this document, and you should listen to us. And also they were trying to do more contacts with the political level, because you cannot just, do all, whatever thing you do, you cannot do without the government. You need to include them because they are the ones who has the political power and the money to decide, right? So yeah, it was really interesting for us because one of the things that we identified at the beginning too was this gap of information that this region has, because this part of the Bolivia is one of the, it's very far away from the central part of Bolivia. So there is not a lot of information in there or anything like that. So as I said at the beginning, so a lot of changes have been happening in their areas, but the communities didn't know why. So one of the things that we want to do is to fill this gap of information, providing them technical support and technical information on what was really happening in their area and what could happen. So I think that was important. And now we are planning to have a second phase of one of the projects in order to continue working on the issues. And hopefully we will get it, but we'll see. But personally, I still stay in touch with them because I belong to a different research networks, and there is always people who want to hear from them. So I always refer them as speakers. And that's another important thing, because a lot of them have been receiving a lot of invitations to speak in international events, and because they were participating in the project. So we opened that window for them and help them to prepare their presentation, their slides, and they are more prepared to raise their voices, to share their experiences.
Did we have another question?
Yeah. Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for all that. I'm Sylvia. I'm also from here, the Disciplinary Ecology PhD. I follow, that situation of Madera, and also the creation and implementation of protected areas in Brazil region. And I know how challenging was all that process. Yeah, but I'm really interested about if you maybe. Did you notice any similarity or differences focusing on the process and stakeholders between both of the countries? Is there any think that we can like, can we reach something or can you highlight something that is different or similar? It shouldn't be, I mean, I don't know, comparing both of the process in Brazil and Bolivia. Is there anything that highlights in your research, something like that?
You're talking about the process of the construction of the dam or process of the stakeholder in general?
The process of the governance, in fact, right? I mean, and how they engage. I mean, is there something that just like appeared during this process that was it like a similar process in both of the countries? Or is that something that really, I don't know, just appears like in different?
Yeah, so because we work in this binational area that just the river that actually divide these communities, there you cannot find much differences regarding the people needs. You know, they are fishermen, they need to fish, they've lost their livelihood because of the dam. They cannot catch the same fish that they catch before, so they have to change their activities. Now a lot of them are doing mining, so they are changing from fishermen to miners, or they could not grow cassava anymore in their land, so they have to do another stuff. They have to migrate to the cities. So all of this is happening in both areas, right? Because it's pretty similar. I mean, it's just a river that is dividing us. But when we go into like the policies are very different. So Brazil and Bolivia has different policies regarding to how they will deal with communities and everything. But also there are a lot of similarities too, like for example, the lack of information. A lot of communities in Brazil that we talk with, like Abuna, for example, until now they have been still requesting the compensation that Jirau promised to them, because these Abuna communities is really, really close to Jirau Dam, and it was really affected. But for some reason, Jirau didn't compensate them yet. But you have these other communities in Guajaramerín, which is like farther away from the Jirau, I mean more farther than Abuna, and they have been receiving compensation and also has a really good relationship with Jirau. They have been having some environmental programs for reforestation or pirarucu management or things like that. So you see what is happening here. Why this community, which is so close to Jirau, it seems like not having their compensation, and this other is farther away, they have it. And when we dig deep, we noticed that the leadership is really important. Abuna was more, not disintegrated, but you know, didn't show a strong leadership, like somebody who's really gonna, you know, put everyone together and fight and everything. And the Guajaramerín, this little fisherman community, they have a really strong leadership, and it is a woman, and she really went and she said, okay, we are going to negotiate. She negotiated a lot of good things for their community. So yeah, it was interesting. And in the Bolivian part, we are more like Abuna than Guajaramerín, no? And we were thinking like how we could reach that level of leadership that Guajaramerín has, because they were able to negotiate with this big company and have what they wanted in some sense. But regarding to running like stakeholder workshop or everything, we use the same methodologies in both sides, and we have good results in both sides. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
There's a thumbs up there in case you didn't. I don't know if the camera's flipping around. We
Okay.
have, yeah, one more question.
Please. Okay. Okay. To keep it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Marlies, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations for your presentation, your very well done work. I think it's amazing what you did. because it's a lot. And I'm wondering, you showed us like at the beginning, all this theoretical background. It's a lot. So I don't want to go through it because I was thinking about political ecology, environmental governance, even social ecological complex systems. So you seems like put all of them together and they kind of overlaying. But now for this presentation, what do you have or emerging in your mind? I don't know, because you like work stakeholder analysis and use like influence, power. It seems very interesting. Do you have something that you want to share with us about this conversation with your results and the theoretical background? Something that just you think it's like, because for me it's like incredible. You have a lot, so some that now you want to share or emerge, or you think is more important, you know, in this case, to talk with the theoretical part.
Yeah, thank you for your question. That it was really challenging. From the beginning, it took me a lot of time to make sense of all the theoretical, the theory part. It was really challenging for me. But I decided to keep the three because I see that each of them has something to add or what I want to do. So my research is really complex because I'm not deal just with one issue and deal with different issues. I mean, of course, it's the dams, right? But you have the dams in a transboundary area with two different countries with different policies, but at the same time, the local community has a lot of similarities. So you have multi-level and multi-scalar things that you have to analyze, and each of these gave me the opportunity to analyze one part. Social ecological system helped me to understand it as a whole, to see how these areas of social ecological system could change in their attributes in different ways. And also the political ecology gave me like the base to understand how the behavior or the actions that the human being will alter the environment or their relationship and how they behave with the environment, and also with the social part and with the ecological part. And the environmental governance gave me the opportunity to analyze this multi-level and multi-scalar part of my dissertation. And the part that I show you for the stakeholder analysis, and just really briefly about the discourse analysis, is just the first question. The other two questions has other stuff to other like participatory methods that I use. One of them has also the statistic part. So yeah, it was kind of complicated. But yeah, I think the three of them provide me with the insight that I needed in order to make sense of this area and these issues that I am analyzing. Maybe it's not as concrete as you expected, but it's what I got.
Thank you for that. So I know folks have to go, and Zoom folks, you may have to log off. So Marlies, I just want to say thank you again. That was wonderful. You've been very, very busy since you were in my class back in 2016, I think that was. So that was wonderful. If people do have any other questions, Marlies's information is on the flyer for this week, and you can get in touch with her that way. But otherwise, I want you all to have a fabulous break, a great holiday, and I will see you all when we come back. But if you have questions in the meantime, obviously get in touch with me anytime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Congrats, Marlies.